Um, I've learned so many things this last year, 15 months. So many things about myself, about life, about service of Hashem, about pain also. And I have to tell you that after 15 months, I have more faith in Hashem, and mainly more faith in Hashem's belief in us. I feel much more strengthened in the human spirit. We've been forced, the Jewish people and our family, to have to negotiate and juggle impossible feelings, impossible challenges, but somehow they're possible. I don't know how, but they are. And I think for me, that's maybe the biggest thing that I've learned. I'm no chochem. I've been in this for 15 months. People have been in this for years and decades, and I take nothing for granted other than what I'm feeling until this point and today. And one doesn't know what the future holds, and one just tries to manage oneself through every given situation. But what I do feel personally in these 15 months has been the ability to live alongside excruciating pain and loss and yearning. And I think maybe the defining story for me, some of you might have seen, I wrote a booklet in English and Hebrew. It was called Kol HaShofar Utrata Milchama. In English, it rhymes in South African English. It was called Days of Awe in Times of War. Americans tell me it doesn't rhyme. It's not Days of Awe in Times of War. But anyway, to South Africans, it rhymes Days of Awe in Times of War. And it's a booklet that I tried to process for our first Yamim Noraim, what I was going through and we were going through as a family. All of us, suppose we dreaded the Yamim Noraim. I know for us, firstly, they're days of awe and dread. They're not simple days. The last time I davened next to our two sons was on Rosh Hashanah. On Yom Kippur, they were both in the army. On Sukkot, Daniel was with us. And on Simchat Torah, Yonatan was with us. So difficult days for all of us. So I tried to process what I'd gone through in the last year through the main themes of the Yamim Noraim. And I want to tell you a defining story that happened with my sister. She's right here. And I'll tell you a story which happened, which for me was a defining moment. Sometimes things happen unexpectedly. And in that moment, you sort of find the words to maybe convey a sentiment. It was my father's birthday. It was in June. It was a birthday that was actually the first time since the Shiva that we were all together, the family, and all the grandchildren, pretty much all the grandchildren were there that day. And it was in Kfar Ro'eh, and it was a beautiful evening. And my sister said what we always said. She said, all the grandchildren come for a picture with Grandpa Gil. And all the grandchildren came up for a picture with Grandpa Gil. But at that moment that my wife saw all the grandchildren, and except for one who was missing, Danielle, it was just too much for her. She broke down. She had to leave the room. And it was a very difficult moment. So obviously left with her and we cried. It was very difficult. And my sister came up to me and she said to me, Doron, okay, she said, Lawrence, that's my name in South Africa, but don't tell anyone. She came to me and she said, you can call me whatever you want to. And whatever you called me, I've been called worse, so that's fine. So she came up to me and she said, for the sake of the story, Doron, she said, I'm really so sorry. I'm just so sorry that I wasn't sensitive to you and Shelley and to cause you such pain. And I don't know where these words came from. I just said to her, Ariella, it's okay. How can we deny Grandpa Gil the opportunity to have a picture with his grandchildren? That's okay. But you can't deny us the right to break down and cry. And then these words came to me. This is how I remember it, Ariella. I don't know if I'm remembering it because of poetic license, but this is how I remember it, and this is how I'm telling it. I remember saying the words, it's okay. It's okay. It's so not okay, but it's okay. And that for me is the motto of how it's been. Our lives are not okay. They never will be okay. We hope and pray that our son will come home for burial very soon, but we don't know. We go to meetings alongside Simcha Golden, and along the family of Doron who waited over 10 years. And we hope and pray. We sometimes negotiate with ourselves. We're talking about the most barbaric and cynical enemy. So the first thing you should do is give back dead bodies. Who drags dead bodies across the border to barter with them? What type of inhumane creatures can do such thing? To kill people, drag them across the border so then you can barter with them, not giving families any indication whether they're alive or not, and keeping them what should be, according to international law, swapping of dead bodies. That's pashut. But nothing is simple when you're dealing with people who have no respect for any humane moral code. And we don't know. As it is today, as we know, there are 98 hostages in captivity. The 2 who were declared brought back and dead, they were hoping they were alive. Yusuf Ziadna and his son Hamza, quite friendly with their family because the brother Ali, the uncle brother Ali, traveled with me and a group of us in a delegation to the United Nations to speak on October 7th, the year after the, to commemorate October 7th. And there was a tekes, a ceremony at the UN organized by the Foreign Ministry. And being an English speaker, I shared a few words, and Ali spoke in Arabic. And we become friendly, and he was hoping and praying that his brother and nephew were alive, and of course they've just been declared dead and their bodies brought back for burial. So of the 98, around 40, just under 40 have been declared deceased, and the remainder we hope and pray are alive. And death is a hard enough thing to deal with. 163 days of hoping and praying that your son is alive, and having to deal with the reality of his, God forbid, alive in the hands of Hamas or Islamic Jihad. We still don't know exactly who's holding his body. And then dealing with a funeral without his body, burying. Thankfully, we had his uniform, part of his uniform with blood in it that we were able to bury, and waiting for a full burial. And situations that nobody ever imagines one will, God forbid, have to go through. And for me, what I've realized during this period is that as broken as I am and as we are and will always be, it's okay. As I say, it's so not okay, but it's okay. Now, I want to share with you something I'm sure you've all heard of, which I want to just process how I'm dealing with it. You may have heard in the name of the Kotzker Rebbe. The Kotzker Rebbe said, Ein yoter shalem milev shavur. There's nothing more complete than a broken heart. I don't understand what the Kotzker Rebbe meant. There's nothing complete about my broken heart. Nothing. And no ideology and no good that comes out of this for my son or for our family or for the world makes me feel any more complete. My heart is broken. It will always be broken. But that's not the only heart that I have. I've also got a full heart. Complete heart. Maybe that's what the Kotzker Rebbe meant. The only words, I don't know what he meant. But I can share with what it means for me. I feel I've got 2 hearts. I feel I've got a broken heart. I feel I've got a complete heart. And they live side by side. And sometimes my heart is broken and the pain is too much to bear. And then very soon afterwards it's complete and there's so much blessing in the world. And I feel very blessed. I feel happy and I feel blessed and I feel at times an incredible, broken and painful. And they work together. I don't know how, but they do. And this, I'm just sharing with you how I'm processing things. And it made me realize that that's what we say every day. We say, V'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavecha b'chol nafshecha v'chol melech. We must love Hashem with all of our heart, with all of our soul, with all of our might. And the Talmud famously says, the Mishnah in Masechet Brachot, what does it mean b'chol levavecha, with all of our heart? The Mishnah says, with both hearts. Yetzer hara v'yetzer hatov. What do you mean both hearts? Don't we only have one? When I last checked, I had one heart. Animals have more than one heart. Human beings have one heart. But the sages notice that the word for heart in the Torah is not leiv, but levav. Leiv bet. Leiv bet. We've all got 2 hearts. One physical heart. But the sages have this very powerful comment where they say you have to serve God with all of your heart. And what is your lev bet, your two hearts? Yetzer hatov, yetzer hara. I don't want to get into what that means. The purpose of this isn't to try and define the yetzer hatov, yetzer hara and what this means. But I can think of no two more different sentiments in the world than the source of good and the source of evil. What can be better than the yetzer hatov, the part of us which just wants the best for us? What is more challenging and opposite and polar, extremely different than the yetzer hara, which wants nothing but our destruction, self-destruction? How are you supposed to take such different sentiments and bring them to God? Well, welcome to life. Bring all parts of your personality. And that's why we say in davening, we say in the blessings of the Shema, God, enlighten us through your Torah. And through your mitzvot, allow our hearts to cleave to you. Interesting, libeinu. And then we say, v'yached levavenu, but unite our heart. What do you mean unite our heart? V'yached levavenu. Designate and unite our heart. Why? La'ahava u'liyirat shmecha. To love and fear your name. All of us know that love and fear are opposites. Love is about intimacy and closeness. Fear and awe is about distance and respect. How do you love and fear at the same time? Now, welcome to life. We've all got different hearts, and there's another heart that we have. We have a broken heart and we have a complete heart. All of us have got parts of our lives which are broken. No human being on earth is totally whole. No one. No one has everything. No one has complete health. No one has complete wealth. No one has complete shalom bayit. No one has complete everything in their home. No one has. There's no person who walks the earth and never sins. Not only in terms of our reality, but in terms of our action. No one has it all. Hashem has it all. Our avot, did they have easy lives? Did Avram and Sarah have an easy life? Did Yitzchak and Rivka have an easy life? Did Yaakov, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, Yosef, his brothers have easy lives? Who had an easy life? Life is challenging. There's so much brokenness in life. One of the most powerful statements I ever read was in a book that I read many years ago. It's called The Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck, psychiatrist who interviewed many of his patients and wrote this incredible book. I read the first 2 pages of the book and I closed the book and I said, I don't need to read any more of it. I read about 100 pages of the book, but I didn't need to. The book was worth it for me for the first 2 pages. Because M. Scott Peck says the following thing. He says, life is difficult. Life is damn difficult. But you know what I found, says Peck? The moment you stop fighting the fact that it's difficult and accept it, it's actually not so difficult. Why is life so difficult? Because we expect it to be easy. Who told you life's supposed to be easy? Life is what it is. It's one thing I've worked very hard on, just to accept things as they are. There's a certain brokenness built into life itself, a distance from Hashem. We're always striving to be closer to Hashem. None of us have got absolute closeness all of the time. There's a certain fractured, Rabbi Sachs has said, reflecting the words of the Arizal of the Zohar, that we live to heal the fractured world. We're incomplete, and we strive our entire lives to be complete. There are parts of our lives which are broken and need completeness and are fractured, and the other parts which are so complete and we feel so grateful for. And we just have to take all the parts, the chambers of our human experience and bring them together. And the thing I've learned this year is that that's what Avodat Hashem is. It's not invalidating difficult and challenging feelings. There are times that things are just too painful. And there will be simchas. Every simcha in our family now will be amongst the hardest time for us. At every simcha in our family, Daniel will be missing. And at every one of the happiest occasions, that will carry within it yearning and pain for his absence. And it just is what it is. And if we accept that we'll come to simchas with a broken heart and a complete heart for what we are celebrating and a broken heart for what's missing, then it is what it is. And I've realized that they work together. The time that I realized that was at Yonatan's wedding. You see, what happened to our family was very much a microcosm of what happened to the Jewish people in Medinat Yisrael on that day. We all know that on the day of October 7th, Simchat Torah, on the one hand, it was the worst day, most fateful day, horrific day, a day of curse, a day of so much darkness, 1,200, 300 people killed, murdered, butchered, raped in the most horrific ways that we know, over 250 hostages. And for 8 hours, the Western Negev became the most dangerous place on God's earth for Jews anywhere since 1945. We all know that. But it stopped after 8 hours, certainly after a day or two, because we are blessed to have an independent state of Israel and an army. And we all know that even in the army didn't know what to do. And this great army of the Middle East was taken by surprise. And from the top down, aircrafts didn't fly. We didn't have information. We didn't know what to do. Thousands and thousands of soldiers and civilians alike came down south, not because anybody told them, but because of the call of Jewish destiny. And what happened to us is not what happened to Syria in 11 days, just toppled. Could have happened, God forbid. But it didn't. And on that day, we saw the most incredible Giluyei Gvura, revelations of the human spirit, of the Jewish spirit, of Jewish destiny. We all know how hundreds of thousands of people came back. Israel's population within a month went up by 3%, hundreds of thousands of people coming back to fight. I heard in Daniel Polis's podcast that in Goa, in India, the two types of people, main populations, Israelis and Russians and Ukrainians. And the Russians and Ukrainians couldn't understand, having fled the war in the Ukraine, how all the Jews and Israelis were going back to the war zone. They said, why are you going back to the war zone? Surely you run away. He said, no, but you've got to do what you've got to do. And that's the Jewish spirit which called us on that day. And therefore we had the best and the worst of times. Dickens's book. That day was the best and the worst day in Jewish history. It was the worst day in Israel's history. More people died and were butchered on that day than more than any other. But it was also the day of unbelievable arvut hadadit, unbelievable mesirat nefesh, unbelievable immediate response of what it means to be part of the Jewish people. We had that in our family. We had our son Daniel, who unfortunately was, after 2 hours and 16 minutes of very, very courageous and heroic fighting. We heard this in the tape that they let us listen to after the Shiva. Incredibly courageous fighting, saved many, many, many lives. Made the very difficult decision to leave his tank position at 8:45, along with his soldiers, to face the second wave of Nukhba terrorists, knowing that leaving the safety of their tank position outside Nachal Oz may have drastic consequences. I don't think he thought of the consequences. I just think he thought of the mission at hand. To stop the 50 or 60 Nukhba terrorists on motorbikes with RPGs, you've got to do what you have to do. It's the oath that you declare to protect your country and your people. And Daniel was missing for 2 weeks, then declared hostage, then injured, and then eventually deceased. So our family paid the ultimate price that so many families pay and continue to pay, and we hope that the death of the 4 soldiers will be the last, and the injuries of our souls will be the last, and we'll only know B'sorot Tovot B'ezrat Hashem. And that's what happened to our family, and that's what happened to the lives of 1,200 others, and many, many hundreds since then. But on the same day, we were lucky that our son Yonatan, who left our home, is also an officer in the paratroopers, and went down at 8 o'clock in the morning to fight just with a handgun, an officer in the paratroopers in 14 different places, and eventually at 1 o'clock was sent to Nachal Oz base, just as fate would have it, fought for 2 hours in Nachal Oz base, until he himself was shot through the thigh. Him and 2 other officers were shot, one in the stomach, one in the back, and him in the thigh, and by the grace of God missed his main artery. It's a very, very dangerous injury. Thankfully, it missed that by a centimeter. And we were blessed that our son Yonatan was only moderately to lightly injured. And that for me was the turning point after 48 hours for the first 48 hours when I just couldn't breathe. I don't know what was going on. I had one son missing and another son injured. And something happened on the Monday, which all of a sudden made me realize that think after Jonathan's officer told us what happened on the day, he didn't tell us much. When I realized how lucky we are that Jonathan is alive. And I realized I was able to say the words, how lucky I am that Jonathan is alive, while feeling how desperately unlucky we are regarding Daniel. Just even the ability to say, I'm lucky and I'm unlucky. That the heart can say, I'm so concerned and there's dread for the fate of the one, but such appreciation for the fate of the other was something that I felt I could say and experience and made me feel that perhaps these two can be handled together. And the incredible moment for me was the wedding. We decided to go ahead with the wedding. We canceled the wedding hall in Brachia, and we decided to do a small wedding in Yad Binyamin on the Tuesday, the 17th of October, when Jonathan was supposed to be married, even though Daniel was missing. And I was always fearful. It felt like the right thing to do, the marriage. But I didn't know how I was going to get through it. So I made a decision that I've shared in this booklet, is that the way I thought I'll get through it is not thinking about Daniel. He'll have to forgive me for 5 hours, from 4 or 5 o'clock to 11 o'clock. I'm not going to bring him under the chuppah with me. It'll be too much to worry about him while I'm trying to celebrate with Jonathan. And that was my defense mechanism. And I shared that my wife wanted to go into his room and feel his suit. He was the stylish one in our family, Daniel. He would always, I look quite good. This is good for me. Daniel thought I didn't look so good. And these glasses also, he'd be relatively proud. Then he'd be clean. But once I went shopping for Daniel for glasses, he liked Lindbergh glasses. I'd never heard of Lindbergh glasses. He took me to Amic Raphaim and he bought these crazy glasses. I could not believe how much they cost. And then he started negotiating how much I'm going to put in. He always set the bar and then started the negotiation. It was never how much you're going to put in. This is how much it costs there, how much you're putting in. So we had this whole negotiation. I said, you don't have to spend 36 months paying off a pair of glasses. I said, these glasses cost 300 shekels. And then he said to me, Dad, with respect, that's why you look the way you do. He said, it's fine. I got no problem. Just, everyone makes their own choices, It's Ruby. Let's give Ruby a hug. Let's give Ruby a hug. To see. He laughs at me, Ruby, because every time I see our group of soldiers, I say shkoyach. So, by the way, that's the best Ashkenazi word. In every situation, you just say shkoyach, and it works. Shkoyach. Nice to see you, Ruby. So, so at the wedding, Shelley wanted to feel Daniel's suit. He bought this beautiful suit and she just wanted to feel it. It's the last thing I wanted to do for the wedding, but I went in with her and felt the suit. It was very, very difficult for me. We had a cry and then we walked out the room and I said to her, Shell, let's focus on what we have. We've got Jonathan's wedding. That's what this day is about. Let's focus on it. And I've shared that I got to the wedding and I was under the chuppah and it was all working well until the rabbi of our community said the following. Rabbi Hillel Merzbach, he said, how can we start this wedding and chuppah without thinking about the person who's not here? I remember looking at him thinking, what the heck is he doing? And he started talking about Daniel and crying about Daniel and praying for Daniel. And all of us, we just all broke down. It was a very, very painful moment. But of course, he did the right thing. He's the elephant in the room. How could we not mention Daniel? Obviously, but I didn't know how to hold that. I hadn't been through something like this before. Nobody should have to go through it. I didn't know how to hold Daniel's absence with Jonathan's presence. I didn't know how to hold it. And therefore, I maturely thought that I'll just push it out of my mind and that's how I'll get through it. But he forced us, correctly so, to bring Daniel under the chuppah. And we cried, and it was very, very difficult. But after 3 minutes, after we prayed and davened and said to him, we wiped our tears and we continued. And the family pictures were very difficult for a few moments. And then the wedding was amazing, the dancing. And it made me realize that when looking back at the wedding, it was amongst the happiest moments in my life, tinged with some of the saddest moments and most painful moments. that under the chuppah one can feel at the same time an absolutely complete heart for the blessing of Yonatan, for the blessing of the wedding, for the blessing of his salvation, and a broken heart for Daniel. And I realized they go together. I don't know how. I wouldn't have thought it possible. They go together. I've shared also that I had a conversation with a number of people. A woman phoned me a few weeks later, a mutual friend, and said to me, Doron, I heard about your wedding. How did you get through it? She said, I have my son's wedding coming up. I lost a daughter recently, committed suicide, and she had sexual abuse. It was a terrible story. And she said to me, there's no way I can get through this wedding without, I'm just dread. How did you get through it? And I remember just saying to her, I said, I don't know how, but I promise you'll get through it. She said, how can you be so sure? I said, because we got through it. And I can promise you the way to honor your daughter is bring her under the chuppah with you. And by crying for her, you will acknowledge her absence and what she means for you. And I know your fear is that you won't be able to move to the simcha. I promise you will. I try to hide from it, of carrying the two together. And it's not the right way. But how can I be sure? I said, I promise you. And I phoned her on the day and gave her a pep talk, and she phoned me the next day afterwards. She says exactly what happened. We're sometimes fearful that we can't hold the two together. She was. I don't know how, but we are. We're a lot stronger than we think we are. And Hashem says, bring the whole of Avacha, bring both hearts with you. Bring both hearts to serve Hashem. And we dive into Hashem. Help us, unite all of us in service of Hashem. I want to share one last idea, but of course, every soldier and every person who's fallen is a world, olam umlo'o. And the one thing that emerged very much, as I said, from Daniel's diary was this charge to himself of Im lo ani azmi. So we made these stickers, Im lo ani azmi. As you know, there's the culture of making stickers. There's lots of them outside. Feel free to take them. And Daniel's tank, Daniel really believed that he had the best tank crew in the world. He loved all of the members of his crew. I think Itai and him were the most competitive. Itai really gave him a run for his money from a competitive point of view. They really pushed each other. And he really felt that he had an unbelievable tank crew. And I think on that day, the most fateful day in there, and certainly the lives of our generation, Rabbi Perez were there to do whatever needed to be done as the last line of defense. The head of the Qtzin Shiron Rashi, the head of the Armored Corps, Brigadier General Ohad Maor, told us outside that he feels that what this tank did on that day changed the course of the war in that area. Certainly played a major role in saving the inhabitants of Nachal Oz base, kibbutz, who were relatively lightly hit, both in terms of numbers of dead and hostages. And I think that certainly for me, I feel that Daniel was doing, he was where he wanted to be, the country he wanted to be in the unit he wanted to be in, doing what he had spent his years training to do. I'll just end and say that there's an expression in Hebrew called asir todah. Always bothered me, this expression. You say to somebody, Ani asir todah, I'm a prisoner of thanks to you. Why is somebody forcing you to say thank you? I'm a prisoner. Who wants to be a prisoner? We say every day, matir asurim. And you say, Ani asir todah. I once looked up where asir todah appears. It actually doesn't appear anywhere in the Torah, in Mikra. But in the book of Zechariah, the word asir tikva appears. So in modern Hebrew, they say, well, like asir tikva, asir todah. There's something about being Jewish, which we are asirei tikva. We're imprisoned in hope. We're prisoners of hope. Being Jewish means living in God's world. And in Hashem's world, there's always hope. I believe the word tikva comes from the word kav. Kav's a line. Every Jew has a line connecting them to God, and every Jew has a line connecting them from the beginning of Jewish history to its end. And when you're connected vertically or horizontally, connected to the sweep of Jewish history, from the journey of Lech Lecha till the end of the journey of Tzipite Yeshua. When you're connected, and when you're connected to Hashem, we live in Hashem's world. In Hashem's world, even when we don't fully understand what's going on, we know that we somehow live in a world of purpose, a world of meaning, and a world that we just can't help ourselves as Jews, but to be hopeful. Arguably, one of our greatest contribution to the human spirit, that if ever there was a nation which could be victims, which could wallow in its lot, we've done exactly the opposite and really continue to be a source of tikva, of never avda tikvatenu, of lishvatcha kiviti Hashem, as we learned in last week's parasha, of kivta Hashem kivta nafshi, of kavel Hashem chazak yametz libecha, v'kavel Hashem. And as broken and difficult and not okay life is, it really is okay. It really, really is okay. It's so not okay, but it's okay. And for me, that's the greatest belief in Hashem, in the strength of the human spirit. And we hope and pray that every one of the hostages comes back, those for burial, those are alive, to come back to their families immediately and to daven as we did, as their fate is being discussed as we speak.